Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. Today is Thursday, April the 23rd, 2020. It's 11:30 a.m. New York time, and this is a special edition of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy, because I have a special guest who is in Ireland, and her time zone and my time zone don't really work too well for all the times we normally record the show, but I really had to have her on the show, so she has very kindly agreed to join me to talk about something that, quite honestly, I've told you guys about it. I didn't think anybody else was talking about it. I was wrong. There is somebody else talking about it. In fact, she was talking about it before I was talking about it. So let me introduce you to Abby Wynne from Ireland. She is a shamanic psychotherapist. I'm going to have to find out more about what that is. An author, energy healer, and teacher. And she wrote an article in early March called COVID-19 Coronavirus, Understanding the Placebo and Nocebo Effect. And when I found that, Abby, I said, oh my God, somebody else is saying the same thing. How about that? Welcome to the show. I appreciate you coming here.
Oh, well, thank you, Walt. And when you said your law of attraction, what was really, really funny is right now I'm trying to record my own podcast show.
Oh, no kidding.
I'm saying I'm trying to because I haven't found my voice yet. Who do I aim it to? How do I do it? Now, it's going to be called Healing for the Healers.
Okay.
And it's all about how to look after yourself as a healer, what a healer is and all of that. And I was so frustrated recording episode 1 for the 4th time on Tuesday that I just finished it and I said, just have me on someone else's show. I just can't do this. And then within 4 hours, I get your email.
Yeah, the law of attraction is a bunch of nonsense. It doesn't work at all.
So I just had to say yes. I couldn't say no.
Well, that's fabulous. I'll share some tips with you afterward about how to make it a little bit easier because I went through the exact same stuff starting in September of 2012 when my wife and I started this thing. And the first few times you're just stumbling around, just trying to figure out how to make the darn thing work. And it takes a while, but
I wrote a poetry book, poetry and short stories. And I thought, well, it'd be great to record a short story. And
yeah.
I actually had to imagine my daughter sitting in the chair opposite me, and I was reading it to her, and then it worked. So yes, I'm thinking if I imagine someone sitting opposite me that I can be talking to rather than talking to the wall, I think that might help a lot.
Well, you just stumbled upon one of the most important tips of all. I do all my shows with either a guest or a co-host. I've tried doing the solo route. It's not fun. It's just,
tough, yeah.
It sucks all the energy out of you. When you're doing it with somebody else, you're feeding off of each other's energy, and it just picks you right up. And I mean, early on, I wondered, could I really do an hour each time? Now it's like, can we get everything done in an hour?
That's wonderful.
So yeah, you've actually stumbled on a very important component. Make sure you have somebody you're actually talking to. It makes a difference. So anyway, tell me about what got you started on publishing an article. Well, first of all, I have to kind of take a wild stab in the dark and guess that you're a fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah. I think I read one of his early books and I didn't resonate with it. I think we might be coming from, the same source, but I do believe that we don't all resonate with the same stuff because we attract different people to us.
Right.
So I wouldn't be out raving about any body in particular, really. I am actually a Hay House author myself.
Oh, okay.
And I've kind of moved on, which is interesting, which is great. So I'm self-publishing books and I've published with Llewellyn Worldwide as well. And I kind of, what I am? I'm an advocate for feeling the freedom of being able to say exactly how you feel about something.
Yes.
And I find that being connected to a particular publisher or group of people, it's like almost that my wings are kept in behind me and I'm not really. And so part of the podcasting, part of the finding my voice is also, I'm free now. I can say whatever I want to, however I want. And what do I want?
Yeah. Well, that's the beginning, isn't it? Trying to decide not what you don't want. What is it that you actually want?
What other than I do want? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what I do care for deeply are all of the empaths and the healers, people who are struggling right now, people who might need some validation, people who might not have anybody to swing ideas by. I believe I'm very blessed in that a couple of my closest friends are also healer shaman. When I ring up my friend and say, I can't get out of bed and I think so, I feel so heavy and and she's like, yeah, me too. And I'm like, oh, thank God it's not just me. Or I can say, I think somebody slimed me. Can you get the slime off?
Right.
And then she does it for me. I do it for her. And it's like a couple of chimpanzees sitting on a tree, taking lice off of each other that you just can't see the lice and you might not even know that they're there. So, but we don't all have people like that,
Sure.
So to teach people that this stuff is real, energy work is real, and that a lot of the issues that most people are feeling right now around the virus, the coronavirus or COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, is fear, heaviness that's being generated by emotional release, by the collective. And for me, it's really important to speak about it because once you can see what it is, then you can disconnect from it.
Yes, that's true. Very
So
good. Yeah.
so that's why I wrote the article, because all of the fear, as people were just coming to terms with it, processing it, understanding, well, what the heck is going on here, making more fear, bringing up the stress levels is going to be that nocebo effect. And not enough people really understand the nocebo effect. It's really important.
Yeah, I mean, most people I think probably have heard of placebo, usually in the context of something that double-blind studies try to eliminate. But beyond that, they probably don't know much about it. And nocebo, it's like, huh? What's that?
Yeah.
So it's important to be talking about both of them, I think. Especially, I really believe that placebo could be playing a major role in overcoming this whole thing. And it's hard sometimes because I keep hoping I'm going to hear somebody in the mainstream medical establishment refer to it in a positive way, saying, we did a little trial or something. I mean, they did have a news item within the last few days about a New York hospital that was using vitamin C against all established wisdom. They were going to use some vitamin C to help treat the thing. And I thought, oh my goodness, a breakthrough! Who knew?
Oh, what about the guy that was buying the chemicals for cleaning your fish tank because he heard somewhere that was going to do it?
Yeah.
There's the placebo effect where it's relatively a benign substance like vitamin C, or there's a placebo effect when you're taking a toxic chemical. It doesn't matter how much you believe it's going to work. If it's toxin and it's going to kill you, it's going to kill you.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. And unfortunately, that also tends to come up in these situations. You actually wrote some very strong stuff, very, very, very strong stuff, particularly in your third and fourth paragraphs. And if you don't mind, I'll read them here on the show.
Go ahead. I can't remember what I wrote now. Please do.
It was a while ago. You wrote, the nocebo effect is why so many Chinese people have been attacked because, well, they're from China, which is where the COVID-19 virus started. The nocebo effect is why Corona beer has already lost, at that point, more than 240 million euro in sales. The nocebo effect is possibly more powerful than the flu virus in that it compromises your immune system before you've even had a chance to catch the actual virus. I'm not kidding about this. The nocebo effect can kill you, like the man who was in remission and doing very well until he was told his experimental cancer treatment was unsuccessful. He then suddenly became very ill with cancer and died. Or the man who took 26 sugar pills thinking that he was overdosing and experienced immediate symptoms. That's pretty strong stuff that you wrote in there. I mean, this is not like dancing around it. This is like going right to the core of it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I do.
Well,
so I'm not for everybody.
You're saying you're an acquired taste. Is that what it is?
Very much so. You have to be courageous and brave if you want to come to me for a one-to-one session, because I go straight to the root of it. And I don't bullshit. I think a lot of people find that very refreshing, actually. But you have to be able to own your stuff when I'm pointing it out to you, and that can be hard. So, but yeah, I mean, I didn't put in there about the tribal days of old where the chief would point to the tribe member and say, you are dead to us. You broke the rules, whatever the guy did, and go off and live outside away from the camp. And in doing so, that was a nocebo effect because they all believed the guy would die. The guy himself believed he would die. He would be excommunicated from the tribe and then he would die. And, and the belief, the power of belief is huge. You can either believe you're going to get better or believe that you're not. And even in my family recently, my stepmother, went to have a procedure done. And I said to her, your mental state before you go into hospital and have a procedure is vital to your recovery. If you believe that you will recover quickly and that you channel all of your resources into that belief, then you have a higher likelihood of recovering quickly than if you decide that you're not, and it's hopeless and I'm going to die. And that's why I dislike with a passion when people hand over their power to a doctor who diagnoses you and gives you, 6 months to live because then you're creating that. That's the nocebo effect.
That is absolutely
true. With the placebo effect, it's sugar pills. And they say, well, sugar pills are like sweets, like candy. It's not a big thing. It's really silly. And you make light of the placebo effect without actually acknowledging how powerful it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's also like psychosomatic illness, which I discovered, oh yeah, she's just kidding. She's only making herself sick. She's just making it up. It's actually incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at myself at one point in my life. I was hunched over. I was like an old woman. And I had been so angry with things that were happening in my life. It was turning me into this decrepit, old before my time, full of chronic pain. And I realized I'm making myself sick with this. I have to let go of the anger. And then I stood up and I felt better. And so we do these things to ourselves. We are so powerful. And when we take that power and turn it against ourselves, it can kill you. So yeah, I'm passionate about this.
I'll tell you, interesting you should bring this up, because I earlier this week told a story to our listeners along the exact same lines of what happened to me over the weekend. At one point on Saturday, I got up and took a shower as normal. And while I was in the shower, I started gaming out in my mind of this scenario. I was imagining these two people, young people, newly met, newly in love, but they were not people who had strong boundaries or anything like that. So they had confidence issues and so forth. And I was kind of playing out in my mind, what's their conversation like? And as I was doing it, I found within like a 15-minute period, I went from feeling really great to almost being ready to throw up, literally physically sick to my stomach. I got out of the shower. I was hunched over. I had wiped all the energy out of myself. And I literally thought, oh my God, have I got COVID-19? And I said, oh no, wait a minute. I've been focusing for the last 15 minutes on this really nasty scenario. And look what I've done to myself. I've got myself sick in 15 minutes flat. Yeah. And so with some help from my wife, I turned it around, got myself dried off, got into a more meditative pose. And about 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, I was feeling great again. But within a really short period of time, I got myself to the point where I was physically ill. I couldn't believe how powerful that was.
Yeah, but you see, then you can look at the energetics behind that. And I would ask you, who are those people? Why were they in your energy field? Are they real people? Did you create them? Were they you in a past life? How come it affected you so greatly? Where's your weakness around that? What is it that allowed you to leak out your power into, okay, let's say it's a make-believe scenario. Maybe it isn't one. Maybe it's a real scenario. And only in your realization that this was happening were you able to pull yourself out of it. People don't always have that realization, and it's not as obvious to them that as it was to you, because it's obvious to you because you didn't know these people. You were just going through something in your mind. But what if they were your family? What if they were your friends? What if it was someone you knew and then you didn't realize that it was actually draining your energy as well? So
well, I had a lot of material to draw on because I had a good 20-year period from my early 20s to when I finally met my wife and married in my early 40s of absolute dry death when it came to relationships. I mean, one failure after another. So I had a lot of material to draw on.
So you were dredging through your own.
Ultimately, I think I was.
Your own patterns, and you're bringing up this solidified, heavy energy and looking at it, and no wonder you got sick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I didn't really think of it that way, but I'm sure that's what it was. Yeah.
But then this is really good to talk about this, because when you can look at that and you can say, okay, this is mine and this isn't mine, and I want to transform this. It's not the nocebo effect. It's not you making yourself sick. It's the difference between a light clean of your house and a deep clean. And you go into the deep clean. Yeah. And you can go into the deep cleaning and say, okay, this heavy energy is stagnant in my energy field, is stagnant in my system, and I don't need it anymore. I'm going to transform. I'm going to lift it out. In order to do the deep clean, you have to lift up the carpet. You might have to go under the floorboards. You have to really get on your hands and knees and get yourself to the point where you might want to vomit. But then afterwards, you've cleaned a deeper layer that you wouldn't have done before, and you feel the benefits for that afterwards. So,
Yep.
so maybe this fear in the collective is triggering everybody's deeper layers of encrusted lower, and they're all faced with their own separate, I joined a haiku group. I was invited to join a group on Facebook. Every day they have a different theme for haiku. It's wonderful. And I wrote one, which again, it was like you, it was like somebody else, not me.
Right.
I'm looking at my life, and, because I'm stuck in the house, I can't remember exactly what the haiku was, but I'm stuck in the house, and I'm realizing I don't love the person I'm with. I don't like my life. I can't do anything about it now. What am I going to do? And on the verge of a breakdown. And that's fears that are coming up too.
Sure.
Because people can be oblivious to the choices that they're making, and, or they can be not making the effort with the boyfriend or the girlfriend or the husband or the wife. And because you only see them for a few hours at nighttime, if you're away working all day, and here, how you go and have your dinner, I'll tolerate you for a couple of hours, and I'm going to go to bed, go to sleep, or wake up and do it all again. And here you are stuck in the house with them now. I believe that China now has the highest divorce rate ever in the history of China since the lockdown is over. They've all been running out to the solicitors looking for divorces.
Interesting. So. Wow. Yeah. Sad, but interesting. Yeah.
So this is really pushing us to look at ourselves, to look at our lives, to look at the choices we're making, to realize that cleaners and food preparation and doctors and nurses, above all, doctors and nurses are frontline. Are more important than luxury diamond items in the stores and all the fancy restaurants, and it's like, okay, let's turn everything on its head and appreciate what's really important. And it's really good that this has happened in a way for that as well. But, will we just go back to the way we were in a couple of weeks after all of this is over? I don't know. I hope not.
I don't think so, actually. This is having a very profound effect in levels that I think most people don't even realize. But like you pointed out just now, not only have there been, some pretty substantial negatives, there have also been positive. People are finding that they're reconnecting to stuff they haven't connected to in a long time. Like you said, they're appreciating, the essential workers, the people who are delivering the stuff to us and getting stuff done that basically get unnoticed most of the time. Well, now they're being appreciated. Does that go away? I don't think so. I think especially on the positive side, on the stuff that feels good, every energetic thing, every thought, every belief that we put out there resonates and just keeps flowing around and keeps building and building and building. Because ultimately, that's how that concept of the planet-wide energy level increases. So I don't think it's going to go away. I think some people will forget about it, but it still will be affecting them on what's often called the subconscious level. I think they'll still feel it. They'll have a different awareness. And I think there's going to be some other stuff that come out of this that I can't even tell you what it is. I'm sure you can't either. But I just think there's going to be some really, really positive benefits that come out of this that we can't even foresee yet. Yeah. Because that's what tends to happen when people struggle with stuff. Struggle leads often to some amazing springboards.
It does. It does. When you're pushed to the wall, then you have to do it. As they say, needs must.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting too, which might not have made the news over there in the States, is that Ireland, we haven't had a government throughout all of this.
That's true.
We had a general election right before any of this happened, and the general election there's these two rival parties that say they're not quite Democrats and Republicans, but the two rival parties of Ireland didn't get enough votes to make a majority government. Nobody did, and so we've had a caretaker government the whole time, and now the two rivals have actually come together and made a document proposing that they will go into government together.
Interesting.
Could you imagine? So this is a historic time.
6 months ago, I would have said no. I couldn't imagine. Now,
and it's like, grow the F up, lads, and get your act together and get into government, because we need to sort the country out. It's much more important than you guys arguing with each other, So it's fabulous. I think it's wonderful.
It's really interesting how this stuff happens. I have my background. I was in school. I had a degree in government and political science, so I have a tendency to follow everything political that goes on.
Okay.
And in fact, it's been one of the things that I've been trying to wean myself away from, because it could be very, very unhealthy to look at all that stuff on a regular basis. But there's a piece of me that's just always curious, and I just have to kind of look at this stuff. So that's why I'm one of the few people who was actually aware of what was going on with your government there. But I didn't
Oh,
know
very
about this
good.
latest development. That's a really interesting one.
Oh yeah, yeah. What's really interesting too is that the Green Party, if the Green Party comes together with the two parties, you've got Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they have enough for government.
Mm-hmm.
But the Green Party are like, it's and bits and I don't think I like this and I don't think I like that. So we're all kind of get together and say, look, lads, we've been voting for you for years. Now's your chance. Get your act together and get in there and do something.
Right,
So
sure.
very interesting, the interesting times.
So tell me more about your practice and the things that you do. I mean, first of all, I did make reference to it earlier. I have not heard the two words shamanic and psychotherapist in the same phrase before. So tie that together for me.
Yeah. It's an alchemy where I went through a process. I got all the things, you do all your courses, you do all your training, but
Right.
I believe there are two types of people who go through the training. There's a type of person that goes through the training is very cerebral, very intellectual, going through the notes, doing it all that way. Or there's the person who goes through and has an epiphany and has a realization and has an awakening and realizes it's all inside of them, and that the courses were just something to set them off and grow them into who they are. And that was me realizing that when you have a person in front of you and they're going through emotional trauma or they're going through some kind of a crisis, you can't say, hang on a minute, I'm going to go look at a book and
Yeah.
I'll figure out what we need to do. I was never doing the healing arts in order to have somebody open up to me in the last 10 minutes of the session and leave them bleeding open for a whole week. And then I come back and say, I know how to fix you.
Hmm.
No, you don't fix anyone anyway, that besides that. But
Right.
I had that happen to me. I was left bleeding out for weeks by
Wow.
therapists who didn't know what the heck they were doing. So when I realized, we can work with your brain or we can work with your emotions, we can do the energy work or we can do this. And I laid it all out like a market stall. What do you want? And the client
Mm-hmm.
would never know what they wanted. And I realized, well, of course they wouldn't know what they wanted. And I don't want to say, well, you're coming to me this week for psychotherapy, but the shamanic healing would be really useful. So we'll have to make another appointment for that because I can't do that now.
Yes, I hear you.
Well, I don't like that either. So I'm a kind of a maverick. I was told I was a maverick. I said,
Okay.
well, F this. And if someone is here and I know what needs to be done, let's just do it. And so that's why I put them all together. I said, well, look, they're coming to see me. They're not coming for psychotherapy. They're coming for healing and they're coming to me for healing. And so it kind of shifted into a fabric that I was able to work from, and it just came very naturally to me. And what happened next was all the books, because I learned things. I see patterns in my clients. I've been doing this for 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So the very first book that came through, I'll never forget it. It was quite early on, and it was called How to Be Well.
Ah, I like the title.
How to be well. And if I was to do a paraphrase, it's how to manage your day-to-day life, how to reorganize your emotions, how to be the master of your choices in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's about reorganizing your energy field so that you are more in balance, grounding yourself and being able to see what's coming at you and respond instead of react. And it was funny because that wasn't what I intended, but I remember I block booked myself 2 weeks where I was just talking into a microphone, and what I ended up with was, I was laughing at one point with, let's say, my guides or my angels to say, you knew I was going to do this. So I wrote this incredible book, and then I went, right, what am I going to do with this? So I brought it to an Irish publisher, and they said, we love your book, but we can't do anything with it. It wouldn't be a co-creation. So that was the book that I eventually ended up publishing with Hay House.
Ah, okay.
And they didn't change much of it at all. Okay, the word count had to come down, but I had an amazing editor who was one of their best editors talk about law of attraction, and she was able to amalgamate some of the work from the later end into the beginning so that it kind of came together more and it could kind of tighten it up and make it more concise.
Okay, good. That's what a
So
good
for
editor
me,
does.
so that's a framework for managing your life based on the shamanic psychotherapeutic techniques with step-by-step exercises for anyone who can say, okay, I've got boundary issues. I need relationship issues, feeling disempowered with authority. My anger overtakes me, all of this. And it's actually done in such a way that you come into like the middle part of the book and it's healing your inner wounds. And I knew I was only touching in on that. Mm-hmm. So the next book I wrote was called Heal Your Inner Wounds. And that's part 2. And that came out a year ago this month, actually. And in that one, I look at healing the inner child, inner teenager, which is very rare. Nobody seems to do that one because teenagers, they're very difficult to work with. But, this is me here. I'm not afraid. So we did that, and then I've got inner 20-year-old where you're dealing with your first bereavement or a violation of your boundaries. And then I'm looking at masculine, feminine. And it was originally going to be shadow and light, but I changed it to darkness and light because for me, shadow is something you don't know about, whereas you know your darkness and you can call it shadow, but you're kidding yourself. It's the darker aspects of me. And to be able to embrace those makes you a whole person. And, so I feel like that's my legacy now. And that's why I started writing a fiction novel. So that's what I'm working on, or have tried to be working on for the past few months, because with the pandemic, like the energy's like soup and it's just very difficult for me to sit still right now. And I think for me to make myself sick would be to push myself to do something I'm not able to do. And so it's great to be able to just pull back and say, no, sometimes just doing the minimum is all you can do.
Sure.
And I'm finding that showing up, writing the articles like the nocebo, placebo, asking my people, well, what do you want from me? Has been really helpful for me because I feel useful, and for them because they feel supported. And I got a couple of emails this week from people that said that they would have gone out of their minds if they didn't have my meditations or the things that I have to offer.
Fabulous, yeah.
So I feel like, I'm fulfilling my mandate to God.
Well, that's rewarding though. I mean, when you know that you're reaching people like that, that's the most rewarding thing of all.
It really is. I mean, somebody today has multiple sclerosis, stuck in the house, is emotional eating. I was getting, it's interesting. What are you afraid of the most with the pandemic was a question that was coming up on my Facebook feed, talk about law of attraction. Mm-hmm. And what seemed to be the answer, and I didn't even ask it, people were asking it was, well, I'm stuck at home, I'm going to eat too much and get fat. That's what I'm afraid of the most. So I'm going to help people with that next week for 21 days, to do 21 days of, going to God for solace, going to energy healing for solace, and that food is just food. Instead of going to the food for solace, Yeah,
it's interesting how you mentioned kind of giving yourself a break, because I've been finding that's really important for what I've been doing during my non-podcast hours during the day. I spend a large portion of the day working on a programming project that my listeners have been hearing about ad nauseum for the last 6 months as I learn a brand new programming platform I've never used before. So it's been a challenge. And as the pandemic came along, I mean, I was really going through a period in November through February where literally everything I tried with it didn't work. And I can't begin to tell you how frustrating that is.
Oh, I get it. I get it.
And then along comes the pandemic starting in March, and that was sucking even more. And I was realizing I can't do what I used to do. I used to sit down and just, work, and just keep focus, and so forth. I can't do that because I just deplete myself too quickly. So literally I've been learning to work in like 15-minute segments. And then give myself a break of some kind, get up and walk around, do the dishes, anything, just something to break it up. Maybe have a conversation with my wife about something that she's been doing, and then go back and just keep going back and forth. And it's a bit of a challenge because I'm so used to getting more done, and now I can't get as much done because I'm just not allocating as much time. And yet, on the plus side, I'm actually getting more done because I'm more effective.
I know, it's amazing. The word that came to mind for me over the last few weeks has been tinkering.
Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah.
Like Tinkerbell, tinkering. You just go in and you tinker with it and you come out.
Right.
You go in and you tinker with it and come out. And it's like, rather than sit down and immerse yourself and get totally absorbed. My parents, I've got a mother, I've got a father and a stepmother, and I have an auntie all over 70.
Uh-huh.
So I have to make sure they've got their food and that they're looked after, and, and I'm feeling bad because I'm able to do things and they're not. And so I just went food shopping for them one day and got all the nice things, the fancy chips and the chocolate and everything. And I delivered it to their houses and said hello to them all. And I was flattened for the rest of the day. And literally the actual job of going shopping, getting what they wanted, getting what I wanted to gift to them, it only took like 2 hours to do that. But I lost the whole day. And I'm saying I lost it because I felt like I lost it.
Sure.
Because I couldn't do anything else. So the amount of energy that we are spending to do the smallest things is massive, because it's like we're climbing uphill, only the hill is like 180 degrees or something. It's just, and so, yeah, we can't force ourselves. But yet, like you say, when you sit down to do something, I came up with a 21-day bootcamp idea, did the website, did everything, and then came out and said, wow. And then that was me gone for the day. As you go and you sit down, because you're already in alignment with what you're doing, figuring out a problem, maybe it happens in the background, in the back of your mind, and then you sit down and you just do what you've been thinking about.
That's precisely it. Because the 15 minutes is after I've been spending a half an hour just kind of playing in my mind with, okay, so if I do this 15-minute activity, what am I going to get? Is it going to produce what I'm looking for? And so it's all about, for me, it's just kind of like mapping all that stuff out, then do it for 15 minutes. Then, like you were talking about, you're kind of spent, take a break, re-energize, and then get back on your mind with, okay, how did I do? Did it actually get where I wanted it to go? Did it produce a different result from what I was hoping for? All the analysis stuff, which is a different thing for me. And I say it's different because if you had talked to me about this 2 years ago, you would have found that I have a tendency to overanalyze things. So I needed to take more direct, just jump right in and stop planning stuff out. Now I find myself kind of going back to the planning thing, but not from the perspective of analyzing it to death, rather from the perspective of understanding what it was I just did. So I'm applying it differently. And when I apply it differently, the energy of it is different. The energy is more productive and less debilitating in terms of wearing me out. Plus, also doing a podcast every day to build my energy up also helps a lot.
But I'm thinking of in terms of nocebo and placebo. As a psychotherapist, there's a branch of psychotherapy called positive psychology, positive psychotherapy. Yeah. And I don't like that at all, because you're ignoring or negating what's real. Mm-hmm. So for me, you get a lot of energy back by saying this is real and it's horrible and I don't like it, but it's real.
Right.
And I see it and it's there. And I think, when you form an attitude about something and that attitude becomes fixed, that's when the problem happens. Mm-hmm. So if you had decided there's no way I'm going to get anything done, I might as well not even bother.
Right.
Whereas instead what you're doing is saying, I'm not going to get as much done as I would like. So let's open the space and I'll see how much I can get done if I do it in little bites instead of doing the whole thing. And I think that's really a good way for people to be functioning right now.
It's a way of kind of getting out of the rut, because that's what we get into.
Yeah. Or even just saying, okay, well, I can't do it today. And that's Sometimes. It. I just can't.
Yeah. Which for me, 20 years ago, forget it. There was no way I was going to take the time off. Now it's almost become a regular occurrence every week.
I know. But, this is where we are. We're going through this transformation where we're realizing that, that we are energetic psychic beings, mm-hmm. that we actually are. And how do we function in the world? Like creating that thing that we want, say, in the energetic space, and then seeing it coming into form instead of starting with the material object is a really interesting time to play with that. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, well, what do I want to see in form, and creating it energetically through your thought process, through your intention and your will. And then you sit down and you create, and it happens quicker.
Yep.
So it's
then
great.
You also get the benefit of instant gratification, which is something that is a really big thing these days. We all want that instant gratification. Well, if you break it up into little chunks like that, you get it. You actually get that gratification.
You're wanting less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is pretty wild. Go back to the placebo-nocebo question for a bit, because that's still, to me, the really interesting one that brought us together here. I want to throw something by you and see if you're in agreement or what the variations you can give me on the theme I have in mind. So often here in the States, and I imagine it's probably true in Ireland and the UK and other places around the world, when you go into a hospital or a clinic or a doctor's office or something like that, there is all the literature. There are the conversations you have with the various staff about whatever reason you're there to see them. There's usually a television that's, showing this information, all this medical information and so forth. And it occurs to me every time, I don't go into offices very often. In fact, up until about 2 years ago, I hadn't gone into one in about 15 years. So it had been a while. Then my wife had some stuff that came up, and so we had to do it quite a bit. But I kept noticing just how much is focused on what we'll generically call the nocebo side. And very little was focused on the placebo side, the heal yourself side. In fact, I would say probably pretty close to none was on that side. And it occurs to me, I mean, when you go in to see a specialist or a doctor or anybody, you go through a series of people. You see the first person who's usually some sort of a intake coordinator. They're taking the information, and they ask you, so, okay, what are you dealing with? Okay, tell me the details. Here's what happened. And then you go to the next person, and the next person's asking you the same questions all over again. And then you go to the doctor, and the doctor's asking you the same questions all over again. Or if you go into the hospital, you see a series of people, and they all ask you the same questions all over again because they're trying to find out, well, is there something that they left out of the first time they told the story that might help us figure this stuff out? And I'm thinking to myself, what if each one of those people in that series of conversations included stuff that said, well, first thing we want you to understand is you are your own healer. Your mind is the most powerful healer that you have. So while we're going to do things to help you get to a better place, we want you to get into a place of understanding you are the person who's going to play the biggest role in your own healing. And then just repeat that message through each one of those sessions. And I just have this gut feeling that just that little change would probably produce some major results in terms of healing rates, how few people are in a hospital at any given time, how long or how short bed stays are. I mean, I think the whole thing would produce some amazing results, but nobody's ever actually tried doing it.
That's really interesting. I have a very dear friend who has MS, multiple sclerosis, and she's at a stage where she forgets things. And so she asked me, would I go with her to one of her checkups in the hospital, just in case she was going to forget things. And she had written down all the questions.
Right.
And so I went with her, and luckily we weren't waiting very long. And the woman that saw her was not the main surgeon, but it was like the next in command. And the positivity from her was just so refreshing.
Oh, nice.
And saying to my friend, you're not going to end up in a wheelchair. And if you start thinking that you're going to end up in a wheelchair, it's not going to help you get better. So stop thinking about it. You have a stick, you have a walker if you're tired. You don't need to get your apartment reorganized, get the builders in and make it wheelchair friendly, because it's never going to happen. And I thought that was really refreshing. But I thought, okay, so what are the insurance implications of her saying that as far as the hospital is concerned?
Good question.
You're never ever going to end up in a wheelchair from this. How does she know that? Yeah. So I think that hospitals are based on a culture where, first of all, the funding comes from big pharma. So God forbid you should be your own healer and you decide that you plant food, and food is your medicine, and that you're not going to go with the major, drugs that are funding it. And then God forbid the doctor says something and you come back and sue them. So, and it goes right back to, let's say, the medical students who are starting out, who end up with psychosomatic illness, and they get sick. Every single thing that they're reading about is shown in their body. They know how powerful the mind is, but they don't want the patients to be taking their own healing in their own hands. They need the level of control. So the system needs to change. I mean, it's the nurses that do so much work, and the nurses don't get the credit for that. So, I mean, in what you're saying is absolutely correct, but I don't think that could ever happen with the way things are at the moment. I'm sitting here with the podcast, right? Healing for the healers. And whenever I say healer, whenever somebody thinks of a healer, they never think of a doctor as a healer. Do you?
Well,
Would
they
you
used
imagine a doctor as a healer? I mean, we used to, but not the way the system is right now. If you happen to get a doctor who also happens to have healing in them, that's wonderful. You
Mm,
know, nurses are great healers, and I would work with many, many nurses who have Reiki qualifications.
mm-hmm.
But there was a situation that I'm aware of that one of my Reiki teachers many, many years ago did 16 to 18 hours of Reiki with her client because he was told he had cancer of the bladder. They're going to take out his bladder. They're going to take a piece of his skin from his backside or something and make a bladder and then put it in, because he was, however, when they opened him up on the table and she was actually present in the operating room, there was no cancer in his bladder at all.
Wow.
And the attitude they have wasn't, well, let's accept things as they are in this moment, which is the way healers work. It was, oh, well, we better whip this out anyway, because this is what we're
Mm,
here to do and we have to do it. And so they whipped it out, made the bladder, the replacement, and then he healed faster than anybody ever healed before from that particular type of operation, because he continued to have the Reiki, and they were in denial the whole time of the healing power of that. So it's only when they can acknowledge the power of healing like that and work together in tandem with food, with attitude, with emotions. And I think some general practitioners are able to do that. You
yes.
know, able to, because they see the benefit. One is like, I don't want to give you medicine unless we feel that you really need it. Rather than saying, well, take the painkillers, take the this, take the that, take the antibiotics. And knowing that each time we take medication, it changes something about us, that the next time we need it, if we really need it, it's not as effective.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, one of the things that might come out of this coronavirus thing is the fact that they've had to cancel all of these planned surgeries that had nothing to do with the virus.
Right.
That people who were sick and needing stuff, maybe they're getting on okay without the stuff they thought they needed. You know,
I
the
wouldn't be at all
surgeon,
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised by
yeah,
that at all. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if not short term. I think this is going to take quite some time to kind of unravel, but in the long term, I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up leading to some general questioning about some of the societal beliefs we have about the medical establishment. I wonder if people will start questioning it a little bit more, start wondering about
absolutely.
possibilities that are different from what was actually the norm, the one that was being pushed as the official line. I kind of suspect it's going to shake things up a bit where that's concerned.
I know, I know, and you know, because you see all these medical dramas, you see, you know, what came into mind was Doctor Strange and his God complex, and how he believed he had the power to do all of these things, you know, and then, but you take that away from them, they don't like that. So we have the power over ourselves. If
Yeah.
we decide we're going to live, chances are we're going to live. If we decide we're not going to live, which is the nocebo effect, then the chances are we won't. So you know, having the conversation, bringing that awareness into, you know, the mainstream is so important, because I don't even believe that it's a mainstream belief right yet.
Not yet. No, no, we've got a ways to go. And yet, every indicator I'm seeing, many of my co-hosts, some of them are energy healers, they're seeing the same thing. There's an overall positive trend going on. And that positive trend, we can't say exactly how it's going to play out, but it almost gets to the point in my own mind where I say, it's got to in some way address these standardized foundational beliefs that have been governing the whole thing for quite some time. And now all of a sudden we're starting to see there are cracks in them. The cracks are
Right.
kind of opening up, and when the cracks start to open up, something's got to shift. That's just the energy goes where energy needs to go.
Do
It
you know
just
what this brings to mind, Walt? When the whole thing kicked off here in Ireland, they were very much around what are the symptoms of corona, of the virus of COVID-19, and you get the cough, and you get the temperature, and you get the this, and then you have it. I'm just thinking that all these hundreds of thousands of people hearing these symptoms suddenly felt that they had it, and they're all queuing up
yes,
for testing, and the testing wasn't available.
right.
And so when they say the statistics, which I can't help it. It reminds me of the Hunger Games. I don't know if you ever saw the Hunger Games, but at the
I
end of
haven't, but
at
I've
the
heard
end of
enough
the
to know
day,
the parallels are there.
in the Hunger Games, at the end of the day, they would have the statistics of who's dead.
Hmm.
And who, and then so at the end of the day, we have the statistics of who's dead. And that
Right.
to me just reminded me of like the Hunger Games, that you'd see how many people have the virus, but they didn't say how many people were tested. And so these figures are starting to come out now that we had, let's say there was 10,000 people were tested for the virus because they believed that they had it. 1,000 people actually have it.
Hmm.
And things are beginning to settle down now because people are realizing, okay, well, I know what the symptoms are. I don't have it. I might have a cough, but I don't have the virus. I might have a temperature, but I don't have the virus. And then they're starting to manage and self-regulate so that when it's on the news or it's on the radio or it's on the poster on the side of the road that says, these are the symptoms, we go, yeah, I know what they are. And you're not feeding into them and needing to know and connecting in and becoming those things. I said, yeah, okay, I know what that is. And as we calm down, okay, yes, complacency is kicking in, which is not a good thing necessarily. But it also means that we're detaching from the urgency, which
Right.
gives us a bit of space to breathe. And it gives us back our sense of, well, who are we in this? And what do we want out of it?
Yep.
And
Absolutely. Absolutely true. Sure. Yeah.
so
It's a
it
big deal.
is. It's interesting, and my kids, I've got two little girls. I've got, well, they're not so little now, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old. I also have two teenagers, 17 and 19. But the little ones were saying, Mama, this is history, isn't it? This is like happening weird in history. I said, yeah, they're going to remember this. So they're doing okay. But try to tell a 10-year-old when all the figures come up of all the people who are dying and the people who have died and the people who are sick and not to get them scared. And I say to people that the children will pick it up from you, your parents. The children pick it up from the adults. And so it's really important to, not carry that fear in you. But it's important anyway, because it's the fear that shoots your immune system and makes you compromised.
It's true. Well, one of my own skills is mathematics. I was always good at math, and I keep waiting for somebody, either in the medical community or the news media or the politicians or any of the influencers, somebody at some point is going to point out that the official projections that you hear, and of course they're bouncing all over the place with what these numbers are, but the official projections, if you take them against the population as a whole, tell us that according to their projections, about 1% of the population are going to get the disease and about 0.1% are going to die from the disease, according to their projections. And no one's presenting it that way yet. But I just know somebody's going to notice that at some point. And I'm kind of wondering, is it going to happen in the next month, the next 6 months, the next year, the next 2 years? Somebody's going to notice and they're going to say, well, geez, that means most of us are going to come through this okay, according to their projections.
Well, I think the scariest thing really about the COVID-19 is what they're not telling us. The stuff that we know they know that they're not telling us.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to just manage around that. Like I don't believe it's anything like the flu. And when the whole thing came up, it's like the flu. And then you finally get the figures for the first month in America. Say the number of people that died in America in 1 month equals the number of people that died from the flu in America in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So we know it's not the flu. Whatever this is, we're building a resistance. We're learning what it is. So I don't think they can truly give proper figures until maybe a year after.
Oh, I agree with you.
Happened.
Yeah.
And to actually step back and say, okay, how many people were written down as having the virus when they didn't actually have it? Skewing the numbers out. How many people? And I kept saying to my husband at the beginning of this, how many people die every day anyway? We just don't get those figures. We don't get those figures. So you're having horrendous numbers, say from Italy, which broke our hearts. 800 people died today in Italy, 900. So I just said to my husband, how many people would die in Italy anyway?
Right.
Because it breaks your heart. It does. But when you look at the population of Italy, and then they were taking great relish in saying the number of people that died in America today is greater than any country in the world. And I'm saying America is as big as a continent. It's not just one state of America is like a country. There's
Mm,
how many states, you know, you can't compare the deaths in Italy to the deaths in America because it just doesn't, you can't fathom that. So, and then if it turns out that the UK figures, they never released how many people died in nursing homes until
yeah,
recently.
yeah.
So
In fact,
just
wasn't the
statistics
thing that
are
came
all
out of the
over the
UK?
place.
I think it came from the UK that one of the major British publications had discovered that deaths were being recorded as COVID, regardless of whether they had been tested to find out whether they had COVID. They just said, "Well, it's it's COVID because everybody's dealing with COVID, so we'll just mark it as a COVID death."
Yeah. But I also believe in the States you get more money if you have a COVID death. So people are saying, oh, I think I have COVID. Great. We'll put them down as having COVID, but they won't even test them.
I wouldn't rule that one out.
So all you can do, and you know, even if we didn't have a pandemic, there's always something going on in the world that will fill you with fear and fill you with dread and make you decide, well, life's not worth living. I might as well forget about it, and make you depressed. And we're going back into the nocebo effect. Is to say, okay, well, if we didn't have internet and didn't have news, where's your community? And what are you doing in the community? How are you connecting to your community? So for me, it's like my family and looking after the cocoon people. I know right now community is difficult because we're supposed to be doing social distancing, but look, you and I connected,
Absolutely.
and we've,
Yeah.
and we don't know each other. We know each other now. You know, there's
Right. Right.
opportunities here for Zoom chats and meetings. And my friend calls it the Brady Bunch because you have all the different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
You know, and people are working from home where the employer said you will never be able to work from home, and now they can't take it back. And so you're
That's
giving
right.
people freedom to say, well, actually I did. You remember I was working from home for the last 2 months? Well, I want to continue 3 days a week. So it's going to change certain things. Say, okay, well, how, you know, my circle, am I doing as much as I'm able to be doing? Yes. Am I resting? Yes. Am I doing this? Yes. Well, then I can't do any more. I'm going to switch off the news and I'm going to just breathe. I'm going to color. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to listen to some nice music. I'm going to catch the National Theatre on YouTube, whatever their offering is this week, and look at how the interest of the arts has come through.
Oh,
Oh,
hugely.
and you know,
Yeah.
it's just wonderful. So you
It's
could say,
great to
okay,
watch people really, in many cases, they're doing it without recognizing what they're doing. They don't necessarily have the background or experience that you and I have with energy, law of attraction, all that kind of thing, to understand the importance of focusing on what feels good. But they're still finding stuff that feels good. They're, you know,
yeah.
they're doing things like you said. They're Skyping, they're Zooming, they're doing all these interconnections, WhatsApping. They're finding videos and images and memes to share with each other that feel good. Oh, isn't that cute? Now, there's the kitten playing with the crow and all this other stuff. They're finding stuff to feel good
On
about.
TikTok, have you seen
TikTok.
TikTok?
Oh yeah, that
You know,
thing's
I
taken
just think
off
that's so
hugely.
fun. And when the young people are self-isolating with the old people, like their dad or their granny, and they get the granny to do the dance, it's
Right?
just
Mm-hmm.
wonderful.
Yep.
You know, it's
Yep.
fantastic.
The dress up parties and the disco parties online and
And we're
oh
having a thing tomorrow. We're having in Ireland where you wear your wedding dress or your prom dress or
uh-huh.
your best clothes, and then you donate some money to the doctors and nurses to help
Oh
with.
okay.
But you can put yourself on the internet then and use the hashtag and Fields Community. Or we had our St. Patrick's Day parade.
Mm-hmm.
All the children drew Happy St. Patrick's Day, put it in the windows, and then people going for walks would take
Oh, okay.
pictures of it. You know, in my community, we had a teddy bear hunt instead of an Easter egg hunt where the child would
Oh,
put a teddy bear somewhere in a window, somewhere in their house, and you had to stand in front of the house and see, can you find a teddy bear? You know, it's like, it's getting people. They had an Easter bonnet, competition on the street. Everyone stood out in the driveway wearing a homemade Easter bonnet. And I think in Australia, they have this thing where you have to dress up to put your garbage out, and everybody's filming it, you know, and it's like people are inventive, people are wonderful. Of course we're gonna survive this. I think Mother Earth is getting a great rest. You know, the skies are clearing over LA. Oh my
oh
God.
yeah,
You
it's
can
huge.
finally see the snow on the Himalayas where before it was too much pollution, you never could. I don't know about dolphins swimming in Venice. I don't know if that's actually a real thing, but you know.
I can tell
So
you that it is true that in Boulder, Colorado, mountain lions were coming out of the hills, walking down the streets, wondering where all the people were.
yeah. And we've had footage of sheep going into towns in Wales and baby ducks walking across the road in Dublin. And, you know,
Yeah.
And it shows how humanity, the best part of being human, which we never really see in real life. We usually see it on science fiction shows like
Mhm.
Babylon 5 or where they're going to survive. Battlestar Galactica is what I'm thinking of,
Oh,
humanity and the
right, right.
courage and, unsurmountable, and we will prevail and we'll do the right thing. And it's reminding us that it doesn't matter if you're black, if you're Chinese, if it doesn't, that we are all susceptible to this horrific, virus that can wipe out. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care who you are. It'll get in there and it'll kill you if it's going to kill you. And we're all protecting each other, and it's beautiful.
And we're,
So
we're also learning just how powerful we are. We do have the ability to pick ourselves up. We do have the ability to help pick other people up. We do have the ability to make life better, no matter what's going on. Our response is really what drives the whole thing. If we choose to respond fearfully, we found out we get a ton of fear. If we
yeah.
choose to respond gratefully, we end up with more things to be grateful for. If we choose
And
to respond with joy, we end up with more joy. I mean, we are in control.
it's funny because in Ireland, they showed how many people are watching the news over the period of time of the pandemic and how there's been a drop off.
Oh, has there? I hadn't seen that.
There's been a drop off of people watching and tuning in because it's the same fear and fear and fear. So they've actually changed a little bit, and now they're focusing on kind of nicer things, and
Good for
people are kind of
them.
dipping in a little bit more. So yeah, we will be changed because of this. And you go through a healing process. There's always the shock at the
Yes.
beginning that, of the thing that needs to be healed. Then there's the coming to terms with the acceptance stage, where you could be struggling with that for a while. You say, okay, right. And then you have the choice. Do I want to heal this or not? And I think we're
Mhm.
all helping each other decide. Yes, we do. And then we have the managing part, and then we have the overcoming part. And it's interesting because this cycle is happening all over the world, all at different times. People who are at the acceptance part are helping through the people who are at the shocked part, and people who are at the faith part are pulling through the people who are having the acceptance part. And that's how it works. And that's why we're all connected. And that's, we'll come back this time next year. It'll be very interesting to see where we all are then.
I really believe we're going to be in a much better place. And I think it's largely for the reason that you just described. You really beautifully laid out how when people decide to kind of take it on themselves, I'm going to do what it takes for me to get myself and others through this. They're basically leaving behind the old paradigm that you kind of alluded to before of that the doctor is going to be the source of all of my hope. The doctor
Yeah.
is going to be my savior, and turning it into I and my friends and my family and my community, we're going to save ourselves. That's an entirely different mindset, and it's a much healthier mindset. And I think as that starts to take hold, we're all going to feel a lot more empowered in our own lives and in our community as a whole.
Well, that's a vision that I will definitely like to hold for us as we evolve and become more psychic, more powerful, more sovereign to who we are, rather than pledging allegiance to something outside of ourselves, to be able to have that internal strength. You see the doctors as people who are in a system that wasn't
Exactly.
working, and
Yeah.
that they're susceptible to this too. Nurses and doctors have been dying from this as well. And I loved it how some of them over in the UK, they printed out pictures of their faces and stuck them on their hazmat suits so that the patients would recognize them because they're covered in masks, to make the
Right.
human aspect of them come through. And yeah, we're all just people in the end. We all want the same thing. We all need the same things, and we can see each other better now. It's great. It's good.
I really think that I would kind of summarize it as we are, as a global population, moving more away from what I would call a victimhood mentality toward an empowered mentality. And
Yeah, I'll
that,
drink
that
to
yeah,
that.
and I can't see how that produces anything but good results. I'm sure there's going to be some negative fallout of some kind that comes out of it because that always happens. But overall, the overall trend, in my view, is extremely positive. So,
Yeah.
like you say, we don't really know what it's going to be like a year from now, but I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be really good.
Well, maybe we should check back then. I mean, again, it's tough. People who have not been aware of the choices that they've been making in their lives, such as who am I with and where do I live and what am I doing, that they're faced with that now. But you know what? I don't know you, but I have a sense that you and I would have done that a long time ago to get where we are now. We all go through that. And so their evolutionary personal growth development's being accelerated in that they are faced with it. And again, it's the healing process where you say, okay, what needs to be healed must be revealed.
That's very true. So this is a special edition of LOA Today. We'll be doing the regular podcast at Thursday, our Thursday podcast later on today at 4 p.m. New York time. So tune in for that with me and Alex and Dan. Also want to remind you, if you're not yet subscribed to the podcast, to become a subscriber. Most people know how to do that these days. But if you're not sure, we've set it up on the homepage of our website, loatoday.net, and it will actually detect what kind of device you have and tell you how to become a subscriber. Also check us out on YouTube, because we live stream now to YouTube, and you can subscribe there as well. And Abby, tell people how they can find out more about you and your books, because you're quite the published author, and you have this 10-year practice and so forth. There's probably out there somebody saying, I got to contact this Abby person. She sounds like somebody I need to know.
Or you can Google me, Abby Wynne, Wynne, or my website is abby-wynne.com. And I've just launched my abbysonlineacademy.com, which is an easy one to find, where I offer all my healing programs online. And I do a group healing session every month. And it's only €12. So what is that? $15 for a full hour healing, and you get a replay and join a community of light on Facebook. So yeah, just come over and say hi.
Yeah, before I leave you, tell us a little bit more about the Academy. What was the inspiration behind that, and what are you doing with it?
Well, I actually am a course designer. In a previous life, before I set up my healing practice, I was an instructional designer, and I would write courseware and software. And so what I've done is I've taken my books and I've made them self-paced courses. I've got a 5 days to raise your vibration course, which is self-paced. You can come on anytime and just take it and start 5 days. And it's great to be autonomous, have my own website that I can spontaneously decide to do a heal emotional eating during lockdown 21 day,
right?
Which I came up with yesterday. So yeah, it's, and there's a lot of replays there that still are charged with healing energy that people can listen to. And I do also pre-recorded healing sessions, because I feel that, it's one thing coming and seeing me face to face, which is what I have to offer. It's another thing saying, okay, I'm going to do this in my own time. And you sit and you listen to an audio and you go, yeah, I kind of get that. I'm going to listen to that again and go deeper and listen to it again and go deeper again. I have people who get these audio files and listen to them 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Mm-hmm. And each time it strips away a layer and strips away a layer and strips away a layer. But you also listen to the concepts and the context and the way I present things, and it changes how you think yourself and how you organize your energy so that you become more aware of that and become more empowered in yourself. Because I want to teach people. I don't want people depending on me to do it for them. What's the point of that? Teach people, and then they teach other people, and it ripples through that way. And it's very empowering for me to empower other people.
That's really great. Fabulous. I'm glad you set that up. That's really good. So thanks for telling us. And thanks for coming on to talk about your article and share stuff and give me a chance to get to know you and give our listeners a chance to get to know you. It's been great. Really, really
It's been great. Thank you for appreciating the time zone and having me on as a special. Had to be home at nighttime because, being out is tough enough at the moment. But hopefully come May, they're going to relax some of these restrictions, and we'll see how we can start to put the economy back together. I have a good feeling now. I think it's just on hold. It's like someone pressed pause, and they'll just come back and press play again, and we'll all just get back up and running again.
There'll be some fallout, I'm sure, but I agree with you. Overall, it's going to be
fairly settle out quick. Yeah,
I think so. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. So, Abby, thank you so much. It was great getting to know you. We'll have to stay in touch, and let me know when the book is out, and we'll have you back. You can talk about the book too. And we'll just keep this correspondence going. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Walt. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to our listeners. We really appreciate you as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.